If you own an SUV and you have been changing the oil and calling that maintenance, there are about a dozen things on that vehicle quietly running out of road right now. And over the next half hour, I am going to walk you through every one of them. What it costs to ignore, what it costs to fix, and the exact number to check before you spend $1. Not vague advice. Numbers, intervals, and the specific place each one goes wrong. Here is the thing nobody says out loud when you buy one of these. An SUV is not a car with a taller roof. Underneath it there is truck hardware that a sedan simply does not have, a transfer case or a coupling unit, a second differential, drive shafts, sometimes a locking system, and every one of those parts holds fluid, and every one of those fluids has a life. But the service culture around these vehicles never caught up. The oil change is visible, it is cheap, it is easy to bill, and it gets done religiously. The parts that actually kill SUVs live under the floor where nobody looks, and they get done never. I have had more of these apart than I care to count, and the pattern is always the same. The engine is fine. The engine is almost always fine. It is the driveline that is full of black fluid with metal in it. Two things to watch for as we go. Number 4 is where a $200 decision at a tire shop on a Saturday morning turns into a $3,000 one, and I will show you the arithmetic that makes it happen. Number 7 is the mistake you can make by doing absolutely nothing, which is a rare thing on a list like this. And right at the end, after the count, there is one single word printed in service literature that I want to take apart in front of you, because once you have seen what it actually means, you cannot unsee it. Let me start with the mistake that sits underneath all the others. Your owner's manual almost certainly contains 2 maintenance schedules, not one. There is the normal schedule and there is the severe service schedule, and most people have never opened the book far enough to know the second one exists. Severe service sounds like rock crawling. It is not. Severe conditions include frequent short trips under 5 miles, stop-and-go city driving, extreme heat or cold, towing or hauling, and dusty or mountainous driving. And short trips are the most common one because the engine never fully warms up, condensation builds in the oil, and wear accelerates. Read that list again and ask yourself honestly which one you do not do. School run, grocery store, 20 minutes of traffic. That is severe service. One shop I came across estimates roughly 80% of drivers fall into the severe category. And I want to be straight with you, that is a repair shop's number, not a study, and a repair shop has an obvious reason to like a shorter interval. I would not build a case on it, but I would say this. I have never once looked at a customer's actual driving pattern and concluded they were on the normal schedule. Running normal intervals under severe conditions is deferred maintenance with a nicer name. And if your manufacturer does not publish a severe figure at all, having the factory interval is the sensible floor. That one decision changes every number that follows. Second mistake, and this is the big one on 4-wheel drive and all-wheel drive vehicles specifically. The transfer case. That is the box behind the transmission that splits engine power between the front and rear axles. Chain, gears, bearings, clutch pack in some designs, all of it swimming in maybe 2 quarts of fluid that gets hot and sheared and never filtered. Neglected fluid is the number 1 killer of these units. The internals need clean lubricant, and if you ignore the interval, which typically runs every 30 to 60,000 miles, the fluid breaks down and you are into a rebuild years sooner than necessary. A $150 fluid change beats a $4,000 replacement every time. Some techs go shorter than that, 20 to 30,000, and 20,000 if you tow regularly. By the way, if you drive an SUV and want to keep it reliable for hundreds of thousands of miles without wasting money at the repair shop, I put together a guide called the 500K Mile Car Care Bible. It covers 101 habits that can help your SUV last longer, the warning signs you should never ignore, and how to spot mechanic upsells that quietly drain your wallet. To get your copy, just scan the QR code on screen with your phone's camera or grab it from the first pinned comment below. What does the failure actually cost? Sources disagree, and they disagree wildly. One national estimator puts transfer case replacement between about $1,300 and $3,400. Another, surveying shops around the country, came back with $2,000 to $9,000 for their sample vehicles. I will take the conservative end and say plan on $1,300 minimum and understand the top end is real on a luxury unit. Either way, the fluid is a rounding error against it. Two traps when you do it. First, fluid type. Some cases take automatic transmission fluid, some take gear oil, and a lot of newer domestic units require a proprietary spec that cannot be substituted. Put a generic ATF into a case that wants a friction-modified fluid and you can swell the seals and turn a healthy unit into a leaking one inside a few thousand miles. Second, and this catches people who should know better, crack the fill plug loose before you touch the drain plug, because if the fill plug is seized and the fluid is already on the floor, your afternoon just became a tow. Third, if you drive a crossover, a RAV4, a CR-V, a Rogue, anything with a transverse engine and part-time all-wheel drive. You have a rear coupling and a rear differential, and there is a very good chance nobody has ever touched them. Here's the one that surprises people. On most CR-Vs with real-time all-wheel drive, Honda specifies the rear differential fluid, their own dual-pump fluid too, at intervals as short as 15,000 miles, because the factory fill is effectively a break-in fluid that gets replaced at the first change and then roughly every 30,000 after. 15,000 miles. That is more often than a lot of people change their oil, and the symptom when it goes past due is very specific. A groaning or shuddering noise on tight turns in a parking lot because the clutches inside are chattering instead of slipping cleanly. Doing it yourself runs about $35 including buying a fluid pump, and it takes about a quart and a third. Now, why one manufacturer calls for 15,000 miles on a small clutch pack while another says essentially never on hardware doing the same job? I have never seen a straight answer to that. I have my suspicions and we will get to them. But I am not going to pretend it has been explained. Number 4. The tire one. Stay with me through the arithmetic on this because it is the piece that makes the rest make sense, and it is the single most expensive mistake on this list per dollar of decision. You pick up a nail, it is in the shoulder, it is not repairable, and the other 3 tires have plenty of tread. The shop says you need 4. You think, of course he does, he sells tires. And sometimes he is upselling you. But here is what is actually happening underneath. Take a common tire size, one at full tread and one worn a little. The new one rolls about 835 times per mile. The worn one, an eighth of an inch smaller in overall diameter, rolls 839 times. 4 extra revolutions every single mile, and that difference puts continuous strain on the driveline. Your all-wheel drive system cannot tell the difference between that and a wheel that is slipping. It reads the mismatch as permanent slip, engages the coupling or clutch pack to compensate, and generates heat that progressively cooks the very components doing the compensating. So what is the actual limit? Manufacturers vary. Some say stay within 2/32 of an inch. Some allow 3 or 4. Some frame it as within 30% of remaining tread depth. I take the tight number because the tight number is free. 2/32 is the most commonly specified tolerance, and I have never seen anybody regret being conservative here. The bill, if you get it wrong, typically $1,000 to $5,000 with the premium systems at the top of that range. Subaru's symmetrical setup is the strictest case. It distributes torque continuously rather than reacting after the fact, which means it has essentially zero tolerance for a permanent wheel speed difference, and a few months on a mismatched set can cook the viscous coupling on its own for $1,500 to $3,000. Now the part almost nobody knows, and this is for whoever is standing at a counter this weekend with one ruined tire. You can have a new tire shaved down to match the tread depth of your existing 3. Tire Rack does it routinely for Subaru and Audi owners for about $25. $25 instead of buying 3 tires you do not need or instead of a coupling. Ask for it by name. And the honest flip side, because I am not here to help anybody sell you tires you do not need. If your remaining tires are within about 2/32 of new, say 8 or 9 30-seconds on tires that started at 10 or 11, you can usually just replace the one. The rule is not 4 tires always. The rule is measure it. Buy a tread depth gauge. They cost about the same as a sandwich, and stop guessing. Notice what those first 4 have in common. Every single one is a small, cheap, boring service protecting a large, expensive hidden component, and in every case, the schedule that was supposed to tell you about it either buried it, softened it, or left it out entirely. That pattern holds for the rest of the list, and from here it gets worse because the next few are things that can hurt you rather than just bankrupt you. And I still owe you number 7, the one where doing nothing is the mistake. 5th, brake fluid. This is the fluid your life is riding on, and it is the one nobody checks. Brake fluid is hygroscopic. Plain English, it pulls water out of the air and holds it through the reservoir cap, through the flexible hoses, slowly and constantly. It typically absorbs 1% or more moisture per year, so a 2-year-old vehicle is already sitting at 2 to 3%, and water does something specific and nasty. DOT3 has a minimum dry boiling point of 401 degrees Fahrenheit, and 3% moisture drops that to around 293. 100 degrees of your safety margin gone, invisible, with the pedal still feeling perfect right up until the day it does not. The day it does not is the long descent with the family and the gear in the back. The fluid boils at the caliper, vapor is compressible where liquid is not, and the pedal goes to the floor. That is the whole mechanism. It is not mysterious. Above 3% moisture, flush it. And test for copper too. 200 parts per million or higher means it is time because copper comes from the brazing inside the steel lines, and it tells you the corrosion inhibitors have given up, which matters because those particles go on to damage ABS components. Most manufacturers land on every 2 years or 30,000 miles. Test strips are a few dollars. Dip, wait a minute, read it. You now know something about your own vehicle that most owners will never know about theirs. Sixth, and this one is short because it is simple. Caliper slide pins. Your brakes float. The piston pushes the inner pad, the caliper body slides on 2 pins, and that sliding motion is what pulls the outer pad into the rotor so both sides clamp equally. The grease on those pins dries out or washes away, the rubber boot tears, water and grit get in, and the pin seizes in its bore. Then one pad does all the work, wears out at double speed, and cooks the rotor. In salted road country, cleaning and lubricating them at every brake service is what prevents the expensive version of this. A tube of the correct caliper grease costs less than lunch. Insist it gets used. If a shop tells you they always do it, ask to see the old boots. Right? You have made it through 6 of these, which is further than most people get into anything with the word maintenance in the title. If this is turning out to be the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe, and I will keep pulling this stuff apart. 5 to go, and number 7 is the one I flagged at the start. 7. Never using 4-wheel drive or using it in exactly the wrong place. Both directions are mistakes, which is what makes this one interesting. Take the wrong place first. On a part-time system, running in 4 high on dry pavement causes drivetrain binding, premature tire wear, and wheel hop. The reason is that a part-time transfer case has no center differential. It was never designed for a hard surface. The outer wheels have to travel farther than the inner wheels in every turn, and on grip that will not let them slip, something has to give. On dirt or snow, the tires break loose and relieve it. On dry asphalt, the driveline absorbs it. Sustained, that damages the clutches in a viscous coupling or the gears in the transfer case. Now the other direction, and this is the part almost nobody has been told. If you never engage it at all, the front driveline sits still for years. Toyota puts it plainly in the manual for some models. Drive in 4-wheel drive for at least 10 miles each month to make sure the front drive components stay lubricated. Engaging the system circulates lubricant through the transfer case and the front differential, which is exactly why you want to do it before you actually need it rather than the moment you are stuck on a slope. So, once a month, find a gravel lot or a wet road, put it in 4 high, drive a few miles, take a couple of gentle turns, listen. Then take it out. That is the whole job, it costs nothing. And it is the difference between a system that works in February and an actuator that clicks at you. 8. Tires that are fine on tread and finished on age, and the spare you have never looked at. The DOT code on the sidewall ends in 4 digits. The first 2 are the week, the last 2 are the year. A code ending 0922 means the 9th week of 2022. From about 6 years on, the guidance shifts to inspect closely and consider replacement. At 10 years, it becomes a hard rule regardless of how the tread looks because internal degradation is not visible from outside. Some manufacturers, Ford and Chrysler among them, specify 6 years in the owner's manual. The chemistry is simple enough. Oxygen and ozone break down the polymer chains, the protective additives deplete, the rubber stiffens and microcracks, and the bond-holding tread to belts quietly degrades. Which brings us to the spare, the tire that never wears and therefore ages out completely unnoticed. Guidance presented at a tire safety symposium notes that the 6-year rule applies to spares too. Go and read the date on yours tonight. And while you are back there, check that there is one. A found that 28% of 2017 model year vehicles came with no spare as standard equipment, up from about 5% a decade earlier. What you get instead is a sealant and compressor kit, and those cannot fix sidewall damage or a blowout can cost up to 10 times what a tire repair costs and have a shelf life of only 4 to 8 years. There is an expiry date on the can in your trunk. Nobody mentioned it. 9, quickly because it is arithmetic. The roof. People buy an SUV to carry things and then load the one part of it that was never designed to carry much. The number in your manual is the dynamic roof load, what it can carry while moving, not what it can hold while parked. And on a lot of vehicles, that figure is around 165 pounds total, including the crossbars, the rack accessories, the box, and the gear. Including. So, 165 pound limit, a 45 pound rack system, and your actual cargo allowance is 120 pounds, regardless of what the box is rated for. The rack maker's rating and the vehicle's rating measure different things, and the vehicle is almost always the binding constraint. Weight up high changes how the vehicle behaves in a swerve, and on a tall vehicle that is not a small thing. 10. Carbon and the service that is not on any schedule. If your SUV was built in roughly the last decade, it very likely uses direct injection. In the old port-injected engines, the fuel was sprayed into the intake port right behind the valve, and that spray washed the valve clean every time the engine ran. Direct injection sprays into the cylinder instead. More power, better economy, and nothing washing the back of the intake valve anymore. Oil vapor seeps past the valve seals as part of normal operation and bakes on. Fuel additives and injector cleaners reach the combustion side. They do not reach the intake side, where the deposits actually are. Symptoms are a flat spot in the power band, worse economy, rough idle, sometimes a misfire code. Cleaning it properly means walnut blasting, pulling the intake manifold and blasting the ports with crushed shell. Commonly $380 to $580, though I have seen shops quote well past $1,000 on a V6 where the manifold is a nightmare to get off. And here is the honest caveat. There is no permanent fix. It comes back. What you can do is keep the oil fresh, avoid a diet of nothing but short cold trips, and know what the symptom is so you are not paying for a third set of spark plugs, chasing something plugs will never fix. 11, and it is the shortest one here. You wash the top and never the bottom. Everything corrosive your vehicle meets, road salt, brine, agricultural chemicals, coastal air, arrives from underneath and stays there, packed into the frame rails, the subframe, the brake hardware, the fuel and brake lines. Salt does not stop working in April. It sits in the seams all summer. Rinse the underside properly with real water pressure several times through winter and once hard at the end of it. Free at most self-serve bays. This is not a detailing tip, it is structural. I have condemned vehicles with perfect paint. Now, the word I promised you at the start. Look at the service literature for a lot of modern SUVs and you will find the transmission described as sealed, maintenance-free, or filled for life. Take the ZF 8-speed automatic because it is everywhere. Jaguars, Land Rovers, Chryslers, BMWs, all running variations of the same box. BMW says lifetime fill and publishes no service interval. ZF, the company that designs and builds the transmission, recommends a fluid service every 8 years or 50 to 75,000 miles. Most other manufacturers using that same box call for a fluid and filter change at 70 to 80,000. Same hardware. Same fluid. One party says never. The builder says 8 years. So which is it? I want to be honest with you about the state of the evidence because it is messier than the internet makes out. ZF's own published guidance has appeared at different mileages in different documents for different applications. Figures in circulation run from about 50,000 miles up to roughly 93,000. And the qualifier ZF attaches matters more than any single number. Shorten it under high temperature, high load, or unknown history. I will take the low end. It costs you one service you might not have needed. The other error costs a transmission. But here's the sentence I actually want you to hold on to. A technician who went to ZF's engineers directly reported back that these transmissions are validated to around 100,000 miles with an acceptable rate of failure on the original fill, and that 100,000 miles is the definition of a lifetime fill because it is past the extended warranty and past the goodwill repair limit, meaning a failure after that is no longer the manufacturer's responsibility. Read that again. Acceptable rate of failure? Acceptable to whom? Not to you. You were planning on 200,000. The average vehicle on American roads is now 12.8 years old, and light trucks average 11.9. Nobody is scrapping these at 100,000 miles. But the word lifetime was never measured against your ownership. It was measured against theirs. It was a maintenance cost and marketing decision, not a discovery that the fluid had become immortal. And it works twice. It makes the vehicle look cheaper to own on the sticker comparison, and it puts the failure safely on the far side of the last day anybody has to write you a check. That is my read of the incentive, not a documented admission, and I will label it as mine. But the arithmetic is not mine. The warranty ends where the validation ends. Somebody chose that. You are not going to fall for it again. When you see maintenance free on a component that contains a fluid, gears, and heat, you now know to go find out what the company that actually built the part recommends, because on this transmission, that company published a number and it was not never. Let me step back from all of it for a second. There is a skill hiding inside everything I have just told you, and it is not turning a wrench. It is judgment. Every schedule you have ever been handed was written for an average vehicle driven an average way by an average person, and that person does not exist. The book cannot know that you do 4 one-mile trips a day, that you tow in July, that your roads get salted in November, that your rear coupling has never once been warm and clean at the same time. You know all of that. Nobody else does. That is what the old hands in any trade actually had that the rest of us do not. Not secret knowledge, just the habit of looking at the specific thing in front of them and deciding, rather than looking up what the average thing needs. It is why a 50-year-old mechanic can walk past a vehicle and tell you what is wrong from the sound of it. He is not remembering a chart, he is paying attention. You can do that with your own vehicle. It takes about an hour of setup and then a few minutes a month, and after a year of it you will know that vehicle better than any service advisor who sees it twice a year for 20 minutes. That is worth more than any single thing on this list. So here is how to actually run it. Not a rule of thumb, a procedure you can run on your own numbers tonight. Step 1. Get the manual, find the maintenance section, and find both schedules. Read the definition of severe service and decide honestly which one you are on. Write the answer down. Step 2. Make a list of every fluid in the vehicle: engine oil, transmission, transfer case or coupling if you have one, front differential, rear differential, brake fluid, coolant, power steering if it is hydraulic. For each one, write 2 things: what the manufacturer specifies exactly, including the spec code, and the last time it was changed. If the answer is unknown, write unknown. Unknown means overdue. Step 3. Baseline the tires. All 4 plus the spare. Tread depth in 30 seconds and the dot date code on each. Now you have the 2 numbers that decide every future tire conversation before anybody is standing over you. Step 4. Test the brake fluid. Strip 1 minute, moisture and copper. And the decision rule for the moment when someone tells you a service is due. Ask 3 questions. What does the manufacturer of that specific component say, not the vehicle brand? What does this fluid look like when it comes out? And what does the failure cost if I am wrong? If the service is a few hundred and the failure is a few thousand and the vehicle is past the interval published by whoever actually built the part, you do the service. If it is a cabin air filter someone is quoting you $100 for, the part is $15 to $50 and the job takes 10 to 15 minutes with no tools, that one you do in the parking lot. Do all of that and here is what happens. Nothing. That is the payoff. There is no dramatic moment. There is just a bill that never arrives. The $4,000 transfer case, the cooked coupling, the transmission at 110,000 miles. A whole series of expensive afternoons that simply never happened to you and that you will never even know you avoided. That is what good maintenance feels like from the inside. Boring and quietly expensive to skip. Now I want to hear from you, and specifically I want the war stories. What did neglect actually cost you? Which fluid did you find out about the hard way, what was the bill, and how many miles were on it when it let go? And the other side of it too. If you have an SUV running past 200,000 on the original driveline, tell me what you did and what you deliberately did not do, because that is worth more than any interval chart. I read the replies, all of them, and the best information on this channel has always come from the comments rather than from me. And if you think I have called something wrong, particularly the tire tolerance, because that one gets argued hard by people who have run mismatched sets for years with no trouble, come and say so. Bring the tread depths and the mileage. I would rather be corrected in public than confidently wrong in private. One thread I did not pull today. Wheel bearings on all-wheel drive crossovers. I keep seeing hub assemblies failing at mileages that make no sense to me on vehicles that have not been abused, and I do not yet have a good explanation for it. I have a couple of theories and neither of them satisfies me. When I get to the bottom of it, I will bring it here. Subscribe if you want to be around for that one. Go check the date code on your spare. It will take you 90 seconds and there is a decent chance it ruins your evening.